808 KNBR 415-808-5627. Niners over the Bucks. Dennis, your reaction to this one, guys, because great win here as the Niners get ready for a short week against Seattle. Brock Purdy, probably the best game of his career. Brandon Aiyuk had a career-type day. The defense looked good, except for, especially on third down, by the way, except for the injury to Hufanga, and we'll get into that. But, Dennis, your immediate reactions to this victory for the Niners as they pick up their 7th win.
Well, I mean, it was impressive. I mean, the offense, they were efficient. We knew that Baker Mayfield, I think Baker Mayfield played a really good football game. I mean, he was slinging the ball around. That screen game was working. We talked about Tampa Bay not having a run game. We saw a run game. The defense should have had, they should have had 4 picks easily. But they finally got the pick at the end of the game that kind of closed it out. But, it was, I thought it was a really good game, just to watch. I mean, the way they went back and forth and, the 49ers kind of petered out a little bit in the fourth quarter. It was like 3 and out twice, I think, but, they got the job done. And
it's like they toyed with them, excuse me.
Yeah. But it really felt like the 49ers had control of the game, but Tampa Bay had a good game plan, I think. I think they played well against the 49ers. And like I said, the defense should have had some more turnovers. But they were bending, but they didn't break. So I think it was a good game. I think it was good. You got a short week now. You do lose one of your top defenders. Hufanga is going to be out. It looks like it's going to be a knee. He's going to be out for the rest of the year. But Brown comes in and he plays well. He got burnt once, but he's proved that the thing about NFL is it's about opportunities, and he took up the opportunity and he played well. So we'll see what happens next week. I mean, the Seahawks end up losing to the Rams, correct?
Missed field goal at the end, yeah.
Yeah. So they're going to be pissed off, and Pete Carroll does a great job of motivating guys. So now you got a short week. You got to do it again next week. Or this week, I guess.
I thought the key of the game was, and it's very similar to what happened last week against Jacksonville. They got that field goal right before the half. They got a 3 and out on Jacksonville. They get the ball back, and Kittle gets a 66-yard touchdown, walks that thing in, and they're up 20-3 after that. Same kind of a situation. Tampa scores a touchdown, and there's not much time left in the first half, and Tampa gets the ball to start the second half. So, geez, this thing all of a sudden just kind of got interesting. But the 49ers go down the field, up 10-7. They get the field goal right there. They go up 13-7 at the half, and then Tampa Bay goes for a 3 and out, and then you're at your own 2-yard line. And a lot of times, if you can just get out from your own goal line, that's kind of the goal. But they get a 2 yards from Christian McCaffrey up the middle, then kind of a misdirection throw to George Kittle for 24 yards to get them out of the shadow of their own end zone, and then just an awesome throw by Brock Purdy down the left sideline to Brandon Aiyuk, makes the catch, perfect throw. He goes into the end zone. And all of a sudden, you're up 20-7. And they threatened a couple more times. Like you said, there should have been some turnovers. Dre Greenlaw dropped an interception. Fred Warner got up, made a play, could have maybe intercepted that ball. That's why they're playing defense. But they make the plays defensively. But that big play kind of took the wind out of the sails for the Buccaneers, the 77-yarder to Aiyuk. And so they scored 10 straight points at that point, end up winning it 27-14. Tampa had a couple of opportunities to come back, but the 49ers did enough defensively. So, again, to get the win, to go up to now be at 7-3 through 10 weeks. And then Seattle, who a lot of that game, they left 17-6, but it's injuries. Yeah, Hufanga we're going to talk about a lot. But Seattle lost Ken Walker III to an oblique injury, and Geno Smith, who came back in the last possession for Seattle, but he had an elbow injury that he was out most of the second half, and Drew Lock's not very good.
Yep.
And so we'll see what happens on Seattle on Thursday. It's a quick turnaround. Are those guys going to play or not? Because if Geno's not playing, if Ken Walker III's not playing, then you're looking at a guy like Charbonnet, who's a nice player from UCLA. Pac-12 fans probably remember him.
Yeah.
But Drew Lock's not a very good player. And all of a sudden, you could turn around, and Seattle's in a tough stretch too. But this is the stretch for the 49ers. Seattle at the Eagles, then home against Seattle again. And this is going to dictate a lot of their season.
49ers 27-14 over the Buccaneers. 13.5-point spread as it closed, by the way. Niners win by 13, and another double-digit victory here. Brandon Aiyuk, as you mentioned, 6 targets, 5 catches, 156 and a touchdown. A huge game for him. George Kittle, 8 for 89 and a touchdown. McCaffrey, 5 for 25 and a receiving touchdown. On the ground, he went for 78. So, again, he gets over 100 yards from scrimmage and does score a touchdown in this one. So he has one game in his last 19 where he has not scored a touchdown. I guess his last 20, which is incredible that he has not scored a TD. Why don't we get to the stat of the game? The stat of the game is sponsored by Stevens Creek Toyota. Shop a huge selection of over 500 vehicles. Stevens Creek Toyota, the obvious choice. And why don't we make Brock Purdy's perfect passer rating 158.3, the stat of the game? 21-25, 333 yards, 3 touchdowns. It doesn't get much better than that. It's been pretty, it's sort of like when we see in baseball with Shohei Ohtani and he ends up on a list with Babe Ruth. If you're on any list with Tom Brady or Joe Montana or Steve Young, these are Hall of Fame players, and especially when the talent is of the modern age. And I know Joe goes back to, of course, the 80s and Steve into the 90s, of course, but the game has evolved. Offense is very much still, a lot of those numbers from the 80s and the 90s hold for today. You go back to like the Joe Namath days, the touchdowns and the interceptions are a little bit different. It meant something different to be a quarterback then. 28 used to be a lot. Then 35 was a lot. Now it's like 55 is where you got to get to. Either way, an incredible start to Brock Purdy's career on a day where he faces a team that he made his first career start against. He beat the all-time great in Tom Brady, and today he matches two other all-time greats.
Yeah, and just to watch him play, I mean, he just looks comfortable. I mean, and he avoids the rush well. He throws under pressure well. And he just, he puts it where it's supposed to be. So, you're right. And when you talk about Joe and Steve, you're talking about, the icons of this franchise. And he's in the same conversation. So, his career has been fantastic. And, he has a lot of weapons around, but he throws the ball on time and he feels very comfortable when you watch him play.
Last two games, he's completed over 78% of his passes, averages 314 yards a game with 6 touchdowns, no interceptions, and the biggest number is probably 12.3 yards per attempt. So, I think tomorrow on all the talking head shows nationally, it's Brock Purdy's okay, Brock Purdy's really good, Brock Purdy stinks. It's going to be Brock Purdy's great again. And I wouldn't be surprised if he was back in the MVP conversation, because nobody's really taking the lead on that. Until the 49ers, that doesn't matter. But what does matter about it is your quarterback is playing at that kind of level. Mahomes is having a good year, not a great year. Their offense. It'll be easier for him to claim it than anybody else, because all he has to do is have a decent month and a half. Or not a decent, a good month and a half, and he can win. But I think of a performance like this, the numbers and the names that we're talking about here is he's that efficient and he's that good. Now, again, the national pundits can have their say about arm strength or this, that, or the other. The reality is, he played just about perfect. And you can say, again, on the 77-yard throw, Aiyuk's a pretty good receiver. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. But that ball was right on the money. I mean, he didn't have to break stride, nothing. And he's making these great throws. He's making really good decisions. They're using George Kittle more and more. You want to talk about weapons. Kittle was underutilized. And today, just from the get-go, he had a 29-yarder, had a 24-yarder. You're starting to see him more part of the offense. I love that kind of misdirection throw where they go one way and then they bring it out the other. That's what got them out of the end zone so they could set up for the 77-yard touchdown. The play before was that misdirection throw to George Kittle. So he's starting to break out. We know what McCaffrey can do. On that touchdown drive, he had 3 catches, including the first touchdown of the game. They are just rolling offensively, and Brock Purdy is back doing what he's doing. I expect him to do more of the same against Seattle, although I will say Seattle, I'm not a believer in Seattle. But that secondary, while not Legion of Boom-esque, Devin Witherspoon is really good. Tariq Woolen had an interception today. That's a good secondary, and their pass rushers, their edge rushers can get after you. So it's going to be a challenge, especially how loud Seattle is. But remember, this is his second time there, so he's not going to be in awe of how loud Seattle can get. We're spending a lot of time talking Brock Purdy, and we will continue to do so. He's the quarterback of a team that's 7-3 now, and first place here in the NFC West, and potentially the leaders to be one of the odds-on favorites to win the Super Bowl in 2023. Dennis, in terms of the defense, we wanted to see this last week. It's funny because last week I thought Brock played fantastic. I think people would agree. Didn't turn it over. Defense was fantastic. D-line got to the quarterback. Secondary felt that domino effect of that. We saw it again today, where they didn't come up with the interceptions, but the opportunities were there because of the pressure. 45 pass attempts, and not all that inaccurate. 29 of 45 for Baker Mayfield. However, 9 carries for 30 yards on the ground for Rachaad White, who's the second leading receiver among running backs in the NFL. They allowed them 3.7 yards a carry, 18 for 66. The long of the day was Devin Tompkins, who had the end around. He took it for 17 yards. Your thoughts, Dennis, on the play of the D-line and the defense in general, because it was as good today as we could have hoped, considering how many opportunities they gave them on 3rd and goal or 4th and goal there near the end of the game.
Yeah, the red zone was good. I mean, there were some plays there where it looked like, it was back 3 weeks ago. They were establishing a run game. That screen game, they were doing those quick passes out to receivers, and they were getting yards like that, long handoffs, I call them. So, I think this defense, like I said, they were bending. Kinlaw had a couple good plays against the run, but they found some gaps, some run lanes there, and they're running the ball a little bit. But like I said, they were bending, but they didn't break. And and the pass rush got there late in the fourth quarter. Bosa, and I think Chase Young had a sack. So it was getting there. It wasn't the goal rush that we talk about, but they were effective. They were getting after the quarterback. But he had a good game. Baker had a good game, I think. I mean, he was throwing the ball nicely. He was connecting with Mike
tough,
Evans.
Man. I mean, he ran a few times. He had that fumble, but he ran a few times and fell forward, picked up a first down at once on a little 2-yard gain. But he's like I said before the game, he's a lightning rod. Teams that sometimes feel like they're somewhat of a dud, I think he makes this team better because of what he's able to do.
Definitely.
I think the Bucs are, 4-5 now, 4-6. It's not a spectacular team. They're still in the mix in the NFC South. But I'm with you, Dennis. I think he makes the team better because not just of his ability. I mean, he's good. He won a Heisman Trophy. He's not elite, but he's a guy who kind of gets the most out of his guys because he's willing to put himself on the line.
Well, a lot of times he was sitting in the pocket. I mean, he had a comfortable pocket a lot of times. I mean, he was just sitting back there throwing to Mike Evans and completing a lot of passes in the second half. It was a lot of third and longs that they were completing, and they were getting the first down. So, I mean, but the defense made plays when it was time to make plays.
Yeah. I also think that, we look at Brock Purdy, his last 2 games, 12.3 yards per attempt is just astronomical. He's number 1 in the league coming into the game at about 9.5 yards per attempt. If you look at Baker Mayfield today, 45 attempts, but only 246 yards. That's 5.5 per attempt. So if you're doing that, and essentially what their pass game is what Dennis just pointed out, it's long handoffs. They get rid of the ball quickly, swings, screens, things like that, and the 49ers have to come up and make tackles. And they really did tackle well today. Tompkins, you mentioned the 17-yard run.
Yep.
Fred Warner missed one around that left corner to set up Tampa Bay in scoring position, so he missed that tackle. But generally speaking, they were pretty good, and they were keeping the ball in front of him. What's also interesting is in the first half, if you remember the touchdown right before the half for Tampa Bay, it was to Mike Evans for 1 yard. He and Godwin combined for 1 catch for 1 yard. That was the Mike Evans one. In the second half, they got 11 total catches for the game, so they got 10 receptions in the second half, those guys. But again, if you look at the yards per catch, Godwin, 6.5 per catch. If you look at Mike Evans, who's a big-time deep threat, 8.6 yards per catch. They had a game plan, you could tell today. Okay, you're going to throw the ball in front of us. We're going to come up and tackle. You're not getting behind us. And they tried. They had a couple of balls that they tried to go deep down the field, but they kept these guys in front of them. Evans, short pass game. Godwin, short pass game. White out of the backfield, short pass game. Going to Ott in the tight end, short pass game. They couldn't get anything over. To have 45 attempts but only 246 yards, 49ers did a nice job in not allowing the big play.
How about Charvarius today? I mean, he had a couple nice pass breakups today also.
That was huge. The one he had in the third quarter on their first drive, if he doesn't knock that ball away, Tampa's got a first down. He knocks that away, and then they go the next drive and get the 77-yard touchdown. So, yeah, he was much better today than he had been in the past couple of weeks.
Niners 27-14 over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They sweep both Florida teams here, but 2 of the 3, I should say. I don't see Miami, but a huge win here as they have a short week, and now all of a sudden going up to face a team coming off a loss in Seattle on the road to a team coming off a bye in the Rams. They missed a field goal there at the end of the game, and a team that's banged up now. Kenneth Walker leaves the game early with an oblique injury. You've got Drew Lock, who comes in for an injured Geno Smith, and then Geno comes back into the game later. So clearly things are a little bit of a mess there, and Drew Lock looked awful in his time when he stepped in for the injured Geno Smith. Adam Copeland, Super Bowl champion, Dennis Brown, John Lund with you. Talanoa Hufanga hurt in this one. Looks like it could be a season-ending knee injury. We'll talk a bit about that when we come on back. Did this victory make you think the 49ers are going to steal that number 1 seed? How you feeling about that short week game on Thanksgiving in Seattle? 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627 is the number to call. We'll talk about it more next. We are live from Levi Stadium. Sunday Night Football is coming right up, but we got more on this Niner victory next on the Sports Leader.
We call those plays every time. Every time you hear a play that might be going, you get excited just because you know you have a great chance of getting it. Just because his timing is crazy, his ability to fit the ball in windows, he's just super accurate, and he's running this offense like it's tailor made for him. And I'm just super excited. I'm sure all the pass catchers are super excited to be playing receiver alongside him or tight end or whatever, even running back. Just having that guy as our quarterback, it's been a lot of fun.
Brandon Aiyuk, big day for him. Had a touchdown, over 150 yards receiving on 5 catches, 6 targets. He had a huge day. I got to tell you guys, like I was talking to, I was out in the concourse and hanging with a couple of guys. And so shout out to Omar, big Niner fan. I met him from Monterey. Was talking with him, standing behind one of the end zones, and he was like, dude, Deebo Samuel coming back has opened up the offense tremendously. If you look at what Brandon Aiyuk did while Deebo was gone, it's easy to think, oh, this guy's out. It's sort of like basketball. You go, Steph's out, maybe Clay will play. The impact that Steph has on Clay is that he runs around and garners all that attention. When Deebo's out there and McCaffrey's out there, you've got to account for both of them as both a runner and a pass catcher. They can line them up differently. They can move them into the backfield. That opened up a lot of short passing game for Brandon Aiyuk this week and last week. We saw more of it early in the year, but he's been far more consistent for big yardage when they can hit him in the open field because of what Deebo's opening up. In my opinion, Dennis, what have you seen?
I think Brandon Ayuk's been playing well the entire season. I think he's a guy that we just kind of forget about for some reason because we get so focused on McCaffrey and George Kittle and Deebo and all. But Brandon Ayuk's been playing, big time football. He's got to be one of the better receivers in the National Football. He just makes those catches, and he's got those yak yards, and he makes those tough catches over the middle. And he is a true deep threat for the 49ers. So I think he's been playing well the entire football season.
Yeah, you know what play they have down that deep in to Aiyuk that just goes over the linebacker and right. Aiyuk is just like boom.
It almost looks like Purdy underthrows it every time, but he's running like a little curl in route, and he's right there. He has to stop to catch it, and then it's almost like because he stops and because of where it's placed right over the linebacker, he can change direction to the outside, and he did it today.
Yeah, he's just become really, really good. And, look, give the line credit. It takes a lot of different things, but he had opportunities to throw the ball. These are routes that take a minute. And, I'm not going to say that Brandon Aiyuk is up with the Jamar Chase and the Jefferson and that kind of stuff, but he's in that next realm of wide receiver. And he just makes so many plays, and there's nothing he can't do. And look, Deebo's great, and the guy you talked to is right. He does open it up for Deebo. Deebo has just a different skill set, though. Aiyuk is a true wide receiver. And what can't he do? He runs the short stuff. He's tough. He blocks. We just saw today he gets the 77-yarder down the sideline. They obviously are in sync. Those two guys have thrown a ton together. Brandon Aiyuk has always had Brock Purdy's back. They've just worked a ton together, and you can see that they synchronize everything perfectly. And so when we start looking at weapons, a lot of times, not locally but nationally, they talk about CMC and they talk about Kittle and they talk about Deebo. They don't talk about Aiyuk. And right now, Aiyuk's playing as good as any of the offensive weapons. And if you're a defensive coordinator, I'd love to sit in Pete Carroll's meetings this week to see how he prioritizes, because I think he prioritizes, I'm sure, CMC. But you've been in these defensive meetings. I would think maybe number 2 on the list. What are you going to do about number 11? Because like Witherspoon versus him this week, or Tariq Woolen.
That's not Clay Thompson, number 11. That's what I'm talking about.
Those two guys. Those two corners against Brandon Aiyuk. It's going to be a really interesting matchup to watch.
Well, you got to pick your poison too, right? That's a great thing about this. The talent on this offense. In a meeting, you're thinking Brandon Aiyuk, you're thinking Deebo, you're thinking George Kittle, CMC. So it's pick your poison. Who are we gonna kind of move coverage to or roll coverage to? So it's got to be tough. But you have a quarterback that can get the ball to him.
It's funny because
some of those throws were amazing, I think, today.
And in Deebo, he got that early slant pattern where he fought a guy off and then got to the outside and he went down. It wasn't a huge reception. He only had 3 catches. They went for 63 yards, and that might have been the shortest of the day, that first one. But when he did that, and it was kind of a medium slant across the middle, or he sort of darted from left to right there. Then he goes for 4 carries, and they're moving him into the backfield to do it. that type of movement throws everything off. I just think the versatility that he's created early in the year, I'll say that I'll raise my hand to the scores table for the foul or the penalty. Like early in the year and in the offseason, we talked about, and I said this, what does Debo do for you that McCaffrey doesn't? I do think they're different style players, but they do a lot of the same things with their versatility. What I think he does do is he gives you a second option. Now we've got to account for two of those guys, and everybody else. Now we're seeing George Kittle, Brendan Aiyuk. It's open wide. Like it's been pretty awesome for the offense since he's been back.
Yeah, and I just think about, you can use in this offense. Everyone can be a decoy, right? I mean, you can decoy everybody because you're so aware of the talent on this offense, and being a defensive back. I mean, you see somebody across your face. I mean, it's going to be a decoy. We saw on the touchdown, everyone was kind of going to McCaffrey in the back of the end zone. George Kittle's wide open.
Why don't we make him then Debo, since we talked so much about it? We'll make him the difference maker of the game. Sponsored by Benjamin Moore Paints. Experience the Benjamin Moore retail difference at our independently owned authorized retailers today or at benjaminmoore.com. I feel like Kruk, Kai, Miller, and Flem there with our pick of the game. Like that was an inside difference maker of the game in Debo Samuel. 70-plus yards from scrimmage, but was fantastic.
Yeah, and I mean, you could pick anybody. You could pick Purdy. You could pick Aiyuk. You could do that every week. You could even pick McCaffrey, who had the touchdown and was really good early in this game. There was just a lot of guys, especially offensively. And you know what? The best thing ever to talk about as far as offense is concerned is didn't have any problems with the offensive line. And Feliciano was in there again. Trent Williams, we were worried about his ankle, having a quick turnaround in Seattle. They all played fairly well today. We didn't hear a ton. Brock made some nice plays moving in the pocket, but it wasn't like they were collapsing the pocket all day. So hopefully the offensive line is starting to get some continuity because it's huge, especially running the football. By
the way, I said Debo had 4 carries. My mistake. He had 1 carry for the -1 yard. So 4 total touches. Yeah, it was 4 total touches. They went a first offensive play. And what does that do? I mean, it's sort of like I just mentioned the Klay Thompson thing. You know how early in games they frequently will feed him when they're healthy to get him going? Because it's like, dude, if he's combustible, and we find out now, it's a nightmare for everybody else. If you hand him the ball early, you've now put it in their head. It's sort of like pitching inside, right? You've now made that part of the game where they've got to account for that. Adam Copeland, Dennis Brown, John Lund with you live from Levi's Stadium here. 49ers over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 27-14. We got more to come. Tracy Sandler, Fangirl Sports Network, is going to join us. She likes to stop by. We like to have her here on our postgame show. We'll get her perspective from the locker room on a day where Brock Purdy has a 158.3 passer rating. For those of you keeping score at home, that's perfect. Only 2 other 49er quarterbacks to do that with 20 or more passes. You know them, the only 2 other guys to win a Super Bowl at QB for the Niners. It's Joe Montana and Steve Young. Tracy Sandler joins us next to wrap up more on the Niners over the Bucs 27-14 on the Sports Leader.
open more with him, or are you pressuring him to get you the ball? Is it Iowa thing?
Yes, well, it's a combination of bullying and just being open more, No. I think we just have a lot of opportunities because the way that Brock takes care of the football and the way that he is able to extend plays with his feet, and he just does a great job keeping his eyes up. And I feel like we're just staying on the field for a long time and being able to take those long drives. And, when you're on the field for 8 to 10 plays, then you get down to the red zone and, the defense is a little bit tired and they might mess up a coverage, which is, I love being open on those nice corner balls. Those are fantastic, and Brock had a great job finding it. That's a combination of our coaching staff knowing that with that one motion that we ran, they're going to change their coverage, and, hey, I'm wide open. Brock knowing it, Brock studying, and us executing that on Friday when we practice it. I do enjoy the fact that Brock likes to throw me the ball in the red zone. It's fun.
8 catches, 89 yards, 27-14. The 49ers beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. George has got to learn that we only have so much of a music bed and he can't talk over it, but apparently he did. He didn't care about the post. He just kept talking and talking. He's like, bro, the music is over. Like, if he was on the stage and it was the Oscars, like, the band stopped playing. You got to shut up.
The band played him off and then they stopped. They were like, he's gone so long, we can't keep playing.
I think we should all hope George Kittle wins an Oscar. Can you imagine that speech? It would be incredible.
It's on the table. It's not on, you know what I mean? It's on the table. Tracy Sandler joins us, by the way, here for the postgame from Levi's Stadium. George Kittle, a big day. We were just talking, actually, Tracy, about how it's funny. We went difference maker of the game in our last segment, and we all kind of were enamored with Deebo Samuel, what the offenses look like since he's returned it. I said, you run a play like that from scrimmage where he runs the ball for -1 yard to start the game. Now you're thinking about it for the rest of the rest of the first and the entirety of the game. He went 3 catches for 60+, but he opened up the offense. Brandon Aiyuk, a huge day. Kittle, a huge day. It's no surprise to me that because he's there and you've got to account for 2 guys like he and McCaffrey out of the backfield and in receiving that other guys have opened up.
100%. That was the difference with him and Trent Williams, that it's just having them on the field. And you're right. That's exactly what Deebo Samuel does. And that's why, obviously, looking very well ahead, but the 49ers might have some tough decisions to make. And Brandon Aiyuk can be Brandon Aiyuk because Deebo Samuel is there. And Deebo Samuel can be Deebo Samuel because Brandon Aiyuk is there. So it's really incredible when you think about this offense and the weapons they have. And as you just said, to have 2 guys like that, like Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel, like leading the league in Renaissance men, is pretty awesome for the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, and we were talking about, difference makers. And I think it's Brandon Aiyuk. I think he's played well the entire season. And we just don't spend a lot of time talking about him. I think he is a good receiver. I think he's one of the best receivers in the National Football League. And I think he plays well even without a Deebo. But we focus on that. What's your feeling or your vibe on Brandon Aiyuk?
Well, Brandon Aiyuk is their best true wide receiver on the team. And I agree with you. He's one of the best in National Football League. I think the reason he doesn't maybe get as many accolades or praise is because you have Deebo Samuel, who's a wide back, who can do all these different things. You have Christian McCaffrey, who do all these different things. But Brandon Aiyuk is their one true wide receiver. He, to me, is wide receiver 1 because he is a true wide receiver. And he's been absolutely incredible. He's been incredible week after week. And they missed him in week 3 against the Giants. They were playing the Giants, so it was fine, but they missed him in week 3 against the Giants. So I would agree with you, and he plays at an incredibly high level. And what's cool about Brandon Aiyuk, too, is you look at the trajectory of his career and where he started to where he is today. And, like I said, if they have to make some decisions, they're a pretty tough decision to make.
Yeah, it's good to be Brandon Aiyuk. That's going to be a nice payday in the offseason. The 49ers win at 27-14 over the Bucs. They got a short week to take on Seattle, who's banged up. They lost today, 17-16 in LA. We'll get into that in a minute. We've got like 5 minutes here, and we haven't mentioned Brock Purdy, 21 of 25, 333, 3 touchdowns, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions last 2. So from the national pundits who went, see, all of a sudden the last 2 weeks, and I would imagine now the national pundits will be like, yeah, I told you, he's an MVP guy again. So I guess he's up, he's down, he's back up. Now we never jumped off this whole thing, but imagine the praise and the love he's going to get this week.
Oh, absolutely. And the reality, the thing is, he was never down. Even when they were losing those 3 games, he was the least of their worries. He made a couple bad mistakes, and they were bad mistakes. But the thing with Brock Purdy is he doesn't make the same mistake twice. And if you look at the entirety of his game, he was still playing at an incredibly high level. He'll definitely get all those accolades. George Kittle made a joke when he first came to the podium. Someone talked about him, and he made the joke. He said, yeah, system QB, right? Because it's absolutely ridiculous. That throw to Brandon Aiyuk was so perfectly thrown. It was absolutely incredible because one of those things, the ball went up and you're almost thinking interception. And then, oh no, he knew exactly where he was throwing that ball. he's really incredible. And he was talking about Jair Brown and him as a rookie. And then I'm looking at Brock Purdy thinking that was you a year ago. That we forget that. This is his second year in the league. He's done everything they need him to do. Kyle Shanahan has praised him week after week, and it's because he really is such an incredible quarterback. He knows how to run an offense. He knows how to lead a team, and he gets the ball where it needs to go.
And he's got candor and he's got mettle that makes you think he's a leader. I mean, he steps to the podium. You forget it because of how he carries himself. He's not, oh, shucks, oh, golly me. I'm this young guy who's just getting it done. He talked today and this week, and he reflected on, we talked to Matt Mayoko before the game about how he started his first career game against the Bucs. When we look back in the scope of what Brock Purdy's career is, regardless of what it ends up being, whether he wins a Super Bowl or has a 20-year career or a 3-year career, when we look back, his first win as a starter coming against Tom Brady and what was his final season, the crossing or sort of, I don't want to say passing of the torch because it's not that, but that element and that scope of where he is now versus that point a year ago is pretty damn cool.
He's started, I believe today was his 18th start.
It's a full year.
Basically... Yeah. He started a season. I mean, it's really rather incredible.
And a wild card game, yeah.
And a wild card game and
right?
a division game and an NFC. Oh, I see what you're saying. But yeah.
Yes, a game-wise, but you're right.
I'm just
all
ready
those
to give
things.
Brock all the accolades. But he's really incredible and just his poise. And every time he walks the podium, it also feels like he's like, oh, there's this kid. He's between math class. He's going to come talk to us. But he's incredible.
Let's do it. Let's on the heels of the Brock situation with him going 158.3, perfect passer rating, had a hell of a day today. Let's get to protecting the quarterback. He took 4 sacks on a day where he had a perfect passer rating. Protecting the quarterback is sponsored by the Contra Costa County Office of the Sheriff. Protect your community and apply for a new career in law enforcement at cocosheriff.org today, and sponsored by Bay Alarm. Worry less about your people and your property with Bay Alarm. BayAlarm.com. 4 sacks today. John Feliciano's in there. We know he's going to play probably in a mixed role still with Aaron Banks when he comes back, which is something we were familiar with, I think, for years with Dan Brunskill, kind of a jack of all trades. What'd you think of the O-line today, and what'd you think of the 4 sacks?
I think the O-line is doing, I'm going to go ahead and say, kind of a yeoman's job. There's a lot going on over there. They've had to deal, obviously they have Trent Williams back, but they've had to deal with a lot. The 4 sacks, but Kyle Shanahan sort of addressed that, and that one of the things they were really working on too was not intentional grounding. And so some of the 4 sacks was Brock Purdy not getting intentional grounding.
Sometimes that's the better move to take a sack.
And taking the sack. And Kyle Shanahan said that was a point of emphasis for them over the week. So that was a little bit. But I honestly think this O-line has really played really well this season. They played well today. They're running the football. Yes, he had 4 sacks, but nothing terrible happened. And they've had a lot of shifting around, a lot of movement. And I do think for the most part, they've really done a good job.
Yeah.
And now you move on to Seattle. You got a short week. Now you're around these guys. You're at practice. How does this team prepare? I don't remember playing Thursday night football games for some reason, but how does this team prepare for a short week?
So everything is compacted. And Kyle Shanahan talked about it a little bit in week 3. And everything is compacted. They really only have Tuesday to install the game plan, to practice, and so that's how they do it. They'll have to come in tomorrow. They'll have treatment in their norm, and then on Tuesday they'll have media. They'll have practice. They'll leave on Wednesday. So everything is compacted. Fred Warner said it's a little bit less of a game plan in terms of everything that you're going to install, just because there's just not that much time. But on the plus side, the other team is also playing on a short week. So, but this is a tough one. And this one, it's funny that Brock Purdy's second start last year was in Seattle on a short week after beating the Bucs. Very different.
How'd that go? Yeah, pretty good.
The rib game.
Yeah. Rib game.
That it's not easy. They'll have 2 this year. Then they'll get those 3 days off before they head to Philadelphia. But the best way to say it is really everything is truncated and compacted, and because they still have to play a full game. Yeah. It's not like the NFL's like, but you don't have to play a full game, so you don't have to worry about as much. So it's not easy. I don't think it's extremely fair to the players, but it is what it is. It's where we are. It's what we do every season. Now you can play more than one, so they deal with it. But like I said, the other team does too. And Seattle did get pretty banged up today. They're coming off a tough loss. So it'll be interesting to see how they respond, but it should be a great atmosphere.
Yeah, here's the advantage, though. If you can somehow win this game like they did last year, and I think they can, because Geno Smith is not having the year that he was having. Now he's got an elbow injury. Ken Walker III's got an oblique injury. They're a really banged up team. I think it's going to be fascinating. We were talking about the receivers. When you're talking Devin Weatherspoon, the rookie out of Illinois, and Tariq Woolen, who we've seen. Reek Woolen, who we've seen. He got an interception today. You win that game, all of a sudden now you're 8-3, and you got 10 days to get ready for Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So their stretch right now, and if you look at every team but Detroit, a massive stretch for Philadelphia, starting with Kansas City tomorrow night. Everybody else in the NFC, Seattle has a really brutal schedule. But you go Seattle, you win that game, you get 10 days for the Eagles, and then you get Seattle at home again. I think they could go on one of those Kyle Shanahan runs. This is the key point of the season, but you get this win, you try to stay healthy. I know we'll get into Hufanga in a minute, but all of a sudden you got 10 days to get ready for Philadelphia, and then Seattle has to come here. So you got an advantage.
And these Kyle Shanahan teams, it's even in 2017 when this team did not win a lot of football games, November and December is their time to shine. And November and December is what really matters. For all that's been made over the last few years, they're 3-4, they're 3-5, they've lost 3 in a row. We are now in the point where it really matters. And this is when these teams really do shine. And I think we'll continue to see that. I think they absolutely should win in Seattle on Thursday. Those Seattle games are always weird. Now there's not Russell Wilson, if somehow made him weirder, but it's going to be tough. They travel, they don't travel far. It's Thanksgiving, all of the things. I do think it's a game they should win. And again, for all the reasons you just mentioned too, the Seahawks are pretty banged up right now too.
To be fair, Russell Wilson makes a lot of stuff weird. It's not just
that's a very good point.
Seattle,
that's it. You're not wrong.
Tracy Saylor, the voice you hear, Fangirl Sports Network, kind enough to join us here on the 49ers postgame show. In terms of Talanoa Hufanga,
yes.
What's it do for it's a team where I've always, and I say this to these guys all the time, I've always believed in baseball locker room culture because you spend so much time together every day for like 10 months that like glue guys are important. You need that to go along. I never thought much about it in football until the 2019 49ers. And it's a good group of guys they talk about. And again, you've got different personalities, different units, guys who play for each other. Coaching is a part of that. Hufanga, to me, was a part of the culture and was a big fit for this culture. What does this do to the defense now that we're getting to know Chase Young, right? We're still figuring out what he's great at, and it's been spectacular, but now you lose another key cog in the secondary.
Well, and someone had tweeted today, and I don't remember who it was, so I apologize in advance for not giving you credit, that coming into the game, Jair Brown had 31 defensive snaps, which is less than Chase Young has had. And Chase Young's been here about 5 minutes. But it certainly, hurts them emotionally. It hurts them mentally. It hurts them from a talent perspective. But we did see Jair Brown came in a couple shaky plays and then made plays and made some plays that maybe a rookie would make. Kyle Shanahan talked a lot about him not getting a DPI on that end zone interception. That really was an incredible play. It hurts them, but this team has an next man up mentality, and for better or worse, this team has had to deal with injuries over the last few years and big injuries, and they know how to deal with it. It is a huge loss, and my heart breaks for Talanoa Hufanga if it is indeed an ACL, because he is such a big part of this defense and he is such a tremendous talent. He will come back, but they're going to have to keep it going because about a month from now last year, they lost their second quarterback of the season and they kept it going. So they're going to have to figure it out. But I do think one of the benefits of them having such a close locker room that you talked about is that a guy like Jair Brown, yes, he's a rookie, but they are a very close-knit group, which means he's part of that group. And so he comes in, and they've talked a lot. Everyone talked today about how much improvements he's made from OTAs and rookie mini camp to now, and that everybody has seen it. And, he has his opportunity, and we'll see how he sees it.
I'm going to go ahead and assume I looked it up. I think the person you're quoting is Guy Haberman.
It is exactly who I was quoting, and I adore Guy Haberman.
So do I. At Guy Haberman, great follow. I said Chase this evening. He said Chase Young has played more defensive snaps for the 49ers this season than Jair Brown. Brown entered the day having appeared in 31 plays.
Yes, and Chase Young has been here.
Thanks,
2
Guy.
games.
Appreciate you, bro.
And that's one thing about the NFL. I mean, you never brought on the football team to be a backup. I mean, you're always expected to be a starter. So now this gives him an opportunity to show what he's got. To the 49ers and to the other franchises. So you're brought onto a team not to sit on the bench, not to play special teams, but to contribute in the defense or offense, whatever you're drafted for. So he's got the opportunity. He started off, kind of shaky, but I think he made 3 plays.
He did.
Big plays in this football game. So he's got the opportunity. I hope he takes advantage of it, because this next week, they're gonna target him. Pete Carroll, I guarantee he's going to target him. So he's going to have a big challenge.
And Brock talked a lot about his maturity, and specifically about his maturity and how a lot of, rookies come in and they're excited and they're very rah, which is completely understandable. But he said that Jair Brown struck him as someone who was mature, who was coming in to take care of business. And when Brock was talking about that, it made me kind of think of Brock last year. So as I said earlier, but I think that your opportunity comes, you take it. It's a weird sport that way too, because you're not rooting for your teammates to get injured, but sometimes in order to get an opportunity, one of your teammates has to get injured and you just have to come in and take over. And
next man up comes from somewhere, right?
It does. Yeah. It comes from somewhere, and that's where we're at. And so it is a tremendous loss, but I think Jair Brown's ready to come in and do what he can.
Well, and here's the other thing, too, is he got beat on the 41-yarder in the middle of the field, but then he came back. The Otten play was a great play. He knocks the ball away and hits him, and then, of course, he gets the tip and gets the interception, which everybody's going to talk about. But remember, kind of like the quarterback, where we talk about getting the reps, now all week long he's going to get the reps. He played at Penn State. He's playing over in front of 100,000 people. I mean, this is not a guy who's going to be intimidated, and you're right. So Seattle, as they start to put the game plan together, they're going to look at guys like Noah Fant. They're going to attack the middle of the field and the safety. They're going to run post patterns. They're going to see if this guy can play. And he kind of had a similar skill set, at least people thought, as Hufanga when he came out, which is slower guy, makes plays, but he's not the fastest. So, that's just what it's going to be. And not only is he going to have to play well, but the rest of the secondary, because he's not going to be Hufanga right out of the gate. No. So they're going to have to make up for that. Gibson's a veteran guy. He's, they're going to have to communicate differently, because that's what safeties do. They communicate so well on the field. So he's going to have to communicate. They're going to have to get on the same page, because you're the last line of defense. If you make a mistake, it's going to look ugly. So he can make plays. They drafted him for a reason. He was their first overall pick at 87 this year. The kid can play. It's just a matter of getting confidence. He's going to get the majority of the reps. They're going to have a game plan going against Seattle. And to your point, the only advantage to a Thursday is at least it's not a team you don't see.
Right.
You've seen Seattle plenty. They know what they're going to do. Seattle doesn't change. They're going to run the football, whether they have Charbonnet back there or Ken Walker. They know what to do with DK. This is that Seattle and under Pete Carroll, offensively and defensively, have never been a mystery. They're going to come right at you. It's just a matter of can you execute against them. They've played there. They know what it's like.
They do. And I think with Jair, too, he did have those 2 shaky plays, and then he made 3 such good plays. I think from a maturity and confidence level, that says something for a rookie, because you could have a little bit fallen apart there in the end zone, and he didn't do that. And I think that speaks well and probably bodes well for San Francisco.
Adam Copeland, Dennis Brown, John Lunn, and Tracy Sandler of the Fangirl Sports Network with you. Following a 49er victory 27-14 over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They moved to 7-3. We'll take a quick break. Tracy Sandler, you going to hang out?
Yes.
She'll be here for at least one more segment here. Tracy's going to hang out with us. Talk a little bit more about this great Brock Purdy day, a career day for Brock. He goes 158.3 on the passer rating. Aiyuk 156 and a touchdown. Brock tossed 3 touchdowns. And McCaffrey, over 100 yards and back in the end zone. All is right in the world. More to come here from Levi Stadium on the Sports Leader.
No, I mean there wasn't much said, honestly. It's always next man up mentality, and my heart goes out to Huff. Not exactly sure what's going on there, but obviously they're fearing the worst for him right now, and that's obviously my heart and prayers go out to Huff, man. That's sickening news, but to talk about the way Jair played today and being ready for his moment, can't say enough about it.
As Fred Warner almost had himself a pick, went up high to tip one away, and good defense down the stretch. The 49ers win at 27-14. The big play, Brandon Aiyuk, 76-yard touchdown. After a 3-and-out, they come out. They go all the way from their own 2-yard line. They get a play from Christian McCaffrey up the middle. They get George Kittle on a misdirection catch, and then they got enough room to throw a 76-yarder to Brandon Aiyuk. Gives them a big lead at the time, and they hang on 27-14. Tracy Sandler is here. Adam Copeland and Super Bowl champion Dennis Brown. Thanks for joining us. Your thoughts on this as well. Text line is open on YouTube and Twitch, so make sure you jump on there as well. And again, next week, Thursday in Seattle, Huff, who we mentioned, of course, Talanoa Hufanga, looks like it's going to be an ACL. It is not confirmed yet, but we'll keep you up to date on what it is. But you were down there, and obviously it's kind of mixed emotions after something like this. You get the victory, but then guys are kind of like, and you could just hear it in Fred Warner's voice. He's excited. They get another win. They go to Seattle. Everything's good except for Hufanga gets injured, so it's kind of a weird situation.
It is a weird situation, but like I said before, they've dealt with it so many times, for better or worse. I mean, I think last year you have a very odd situation. It's very rare that you're going to go from quarterback to quarterback to quarterback, and they deal with it. But it is a weird situation. I think there's a lot of emotion involved in it. But then by the same token, as we talked about having a short week, they have to focus on the game and move forward. And that is the thing that's really tough. It's a tough thing about sports. It's especially tough about football, of course. But we'll see what happens. It sounds like it's not going to be good, but maybe there'll be some miracles.
Yeah, and the great thing about being in NFL, I mean, it's part of the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Guys are gonna get hurt. Your teammates are gonna get hurt, and you feel bad for him, but you do understand that it goes on.
Yeah.
NFL you play every week, and you count on. Locker room tends to kind of gather around those guys who have to be the next man up, and those veterans kind of take over. And in that secondary, there's a lot of vets in that secondary, and I'm sure they get around this kid and let him know this is it's a bad situation, but it is your opportunity, and you got to play well, and we expect you to play well. And it's a divisional game. We have to go on the road and play in a short week, so everybody kind of gathers around that guy. When you lose someone, especially a starter, someone who's a big part of your defense, you lose them, the locker room kind of gathers around the guy who's coming up next, and you just kind of give him support throughout the week. But then you expect him to ball out, when game time comes. And
that happened last year with Emmanuel Mosley, and that's what gave Diamador Lenore his opportunity. A little bit different than Emmanuel Mosley was in the last year of a contract, and but he was a huge leader on that defense, huge leader on that team, beloved by his teammates. It was a terrible loss. Everybody felt terrible for him, and then they went to the Greenbrier. Were there for a week, and then they go to Atlanta, but that's, Diamador Lenore stepped up, and here he is today. So it is unfortunate. It's really the tough part of the sport. It's the part of the sport that's so brutal.
Yeah.
Where do you think the 49ers stack up in terms of the NFC's number one seed? Seattle goes down today after a missed kick to the Rams.
Mm-hmm.
You have the Lions today, who are, that was the one we were talking about. John and I and Dennis were watching that game closely in the pregame show, because we were like, man, the Bears come back and win this thing. Lions have the easiest road, and I think they were in a great situation, similar to the Niners in 19 in terms of strength of schedule, which was more difficult for the Niners in 19, but you were a team that was not a first-place team the year before, so those teams are prepared kind of to make that jump. I think it stacks up fairly well with how it's played out now. If they win in Seattle, they're in a great spot. They need a little bit of help still from maybe the Cowboys, which is sort of funny. But you've got to handle business in Philadelphia. Where do you think they stand? You think it's still a pretty good shot?
I think they have a shot. I think the hard part is...
What about a pretty good shot? Do you think about
a pretty good... I think they have a pretty good shot.
Careful, we don't want to give Greg any ammo. All right,
I do love a Purdy pun, though. So, I'm trying to move more into like Brock Star. Let's Brock and roll, just because I've used Purdy so much. But
I've used that one, Tracy. I know about it already.
I won't be stopped. But I think they have a shot. I think Philly's tough. Philly has a tough schedule ahead of them, so they're absolutely... But Philly's tough. That game, really... To me, not to be overly dramatic, though I've been accused of that before and I'm fine with it, that game against Philly probably is for the number one seed. I know that Detroit's ahead of them right now, but so maybe that's unfair to the Lions, who are playing incredible football, but I think that game is for the number one seed. Because if the 49ers, let's pretend they win on Thursday, they lose to Philly, now they have 4 losses. let's pretend Philly loses once in the next couple weeks. I mean, it just gets tough because the problem is too with that, even if they end up with the same record, then Philly would have the tiebreaker. So I believe. So that's where it gets tough. Because I think the tiebreaker would be their head-to-head matchup before anything else.
Head-to-head is first, and then it's division record.
So that's where I think it gets tough. It is by no means impossible. There's a lot of football left to play, so they have a shot, but it's not maybe as easy as one would want it to be if you were a 49er fan.
Here's one of the things, too, is if you look at all the contenders, I'll save the Lions for last just because you look at the key stretch. Right now, the 49ers at Seattle, at the Eagles, Seattle, throw out the Cards, I guess that could be an issue with Murray back, but probably not. And then the Ravens. So that's a really tough schedule. Seattle, the Eagles, Seattle, Cardinals, Ravens. You look at the Eagles, starting right now, Monday night against the Chiefs, at Chiefs, Bills, 49ers, at Cowboys, at Seahawks. You start is the Seahawks.
That's tougher.
Right. You look at the Seahawks stretch, 49ers, at Cowboys, Eagles, at 49ers. Really tough stretches for every team. Now here's the Lions. Please, they're 8-2. Packers, at Saints, at Bears, Broncos, at Vikings, at Cowboys, Vikings. That's it. The only team that is above average, they have one playoff team in there. They have the Vikings twice. Now, Denver, they just turned the TV on us. Denver and the Vikings are on right now, and maybe Josh Dobbs can continue this run. But if he can't, they play the Bears again. They play the Packers. They play in the Saints. They could get upset. There's no question about it. The Lions are the Lions. But they have a much easier schedule, and what could potentially happen is you could get a three-way tie between the 49ers, the Cowboys, and the Lions. Then it goes down to conference record.
Games, right? Oh, conference is the last one.
So as you start thinking about that, that's why the Eagles would have to lose to the 49ers and the Cowboys, or the Lions would have to lose in conference Vikings. They would have lost to Seattle. So now you don't want to lose to the Ravens, but if you're going to lose a game and you're the 49ers, you'd rather have it be the Ravens in the AFC, because it's going to come down to potentially the NFC and what your record is within the conference. So just something to keep in mind.
No, absolutely. And that's where it gets tough, and it'll be interesting. And the reality is, and I know that we've seen the 49ers go on runs where they never lose another game, and they may have a run like that the rest of this season. But usually in the NFL, you will lose a game that you should not lose. You might win a game that you should not win. So for San Francisco, they are certainly not in a position to lose one of those games that they should not lose. And it's hard for them to beat Seattle twice. They have done it before. I believe they did it last season.
They beat them 3 times last year.
That's true. They did. They beat them 3 times last year, but it doesn't always.
No, but you're
work
right.
out.
Your point is right.
And
the other point is too, regardless of what the Lions do, the Eagles game is everything.
It is. That's the game.
I mean, they can't lose the other ones, but they could lose the Ravens and still be okay. I think it's unrealistic to think they're going to run the table at this point. They could. But to be in any kind of conversation in the NFC, you have to beat the Eagles. You hope the Eagles lose tomorrow night to Kansas City. Then all of a sudden that game becomes, you win it, and you're at the top along with the Lions. So, because right now where they're sitting is third in the NFC, they would, just for the sake of conversation, they'd play a wild card game, then they'd go to Detroit. If they win that, they'd have to go to Philly. If they, obviously, you want to be the 1 seed, get the bye, and everything comes through here. That's a massive difference between going to Detroit and Philly.
Let me tell you who else would like that is the nice little reporter that follows these people wherever they go. She would also like to not have to go to Detroit.
Dude, we say that frequently. We root for ourselves in this industry. You know what I mean? We frequently root for ourselves.
If they play the Lions, I could get another trip to Ann Arbor, so I don't.
I guess you could, but the thing is,
John, you act like we all weren't stoked here, being like we're the 105 game today instead of the 125. You guys act like you might go 20 minutes. No, it's a big deal.
No,
it's a major deal.
You're 100% right. We're all in. Plus, once the playoffs hit, I mean, I know players weren't like that, but it was like, what's the city? Like, I want to go to a great city, and then at the end, go to Vegas. I mean, are you kidding me? That's what we all want.
Well, and there's also something to be said, and I say this as a reporter, but I imagine it's true for the players, too. If you have the first round bye, everyone goes through here. Otherwise, every week, you don't know where you're going. You go into a game hoping if you win, you have no idea where you're going. And I'll take you back to 2019, being in that press box in Seattle, and midway through the fourth quarter, because I don't have an assistant I book on my travel. So midway through the fourth quarter, I texted my dad, who sometimes can be a fabulous assistant, and said, could you start looking at flights to Philadelphia and hotels? Because I was thinking, I'm not going to
until
do
Dre
that.
made that tackle.
So then I was like, okay, never mind, we're good here. but I like that changed, and it was going to
just make one trip to Miami. Dad, just make me a trip to Miami.
John, who's in charge if the Niners go? Who's in charge of booking our travel?
Probably not my dad.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Who's in charge of that, though? Is it
You would know, wouldn't you?
You are now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's you.
Is that us on me? Am I sitting
I
here?
want
It's you
first
and me,
class
kid,
to
because I'm
Vegas.
really good at booking travel.
How about this NFC Championship? You guys got the post
Where are we
all right?
staying?
You guys handle it. Where are we staying? On my couch, John. That's
Exactly.
where you're staying, dude.
I have friends in Vegas.
I got to blow a mattress for you, brother. Tracy
But
Sandler.
isn't it amazing we're talking about Detroit? You know, we're talking about
I
number
still
one
can't-
seats. We're talking about Detroit.
I mean, not anymore.
Dude, I worked in Detroit when they went 0-16. So when I was pre and post game for the Lions. So when they keep winning, I just can't. Like I'm watching them lose to Chicago today, and went, "See, told ya, I knew it." And then they come back and win. It's the same Honolulu blue and silver, and I'm like, this can't be happening. Like the Fords
they're
still
legit.
own them. They are legit.
And also, can we just, I know that this is not a Lions show, but can we give like a little
Oh,
bit
here
of
we
props
go.
to Jared Goff?
Oh, okay. I thought you were
Oh.
going to Michigan.
Barry,
Sorry.
kid, we
I,
can do
I
it.
need to get
I
to
thought you were going to
Chick
twist that into maize and gold somehow.
Well, maize and blue.
We can go Marin Catholic. We can go Marin Catholic catching home runs at Oracle Park
One
and
of
at
us,
Tim
by the
Lincecum
way,
jersey.
is
You
going
know
to
what I
be in
mean?
Ann Arbor this weekend for the Michigan-Ohio State game, and I know it's not the three of you. So.
And I know, by the way, I know it's not Jim Harbaugh either. Her name is Tracy Sandler.
come
From the
on.
Fangirl Sports.
That's how he's going to leave you? He's kicking you out of here after that? Do you have
Just for that, Jake Moody was perfect today for all your talk about Brock Purdy.
There we
Jake Moody
go.
was perfect. Thank you very much.
Give her time. Anything else? Any
By the
shot at
way-
Adam you'd like to take?
Well, by the way, you got to talk to Dante Whitner, who of course played for Jim Harbaugh and at Ohio
you guys
State.
got him a bet or
No, we had him
something,
on
right?
Friday, and I just asked him. I said, "Dude, your thoughts? Like, you see this, you hear this?" And he, Dante's awesome, and he's a pro. And he goes, "Well, you know, he's like, I played for him. I'm a Jim Harbaugh guy. I love Jim Harbaugh, but he's a cheater."
No, he is not a cheater.
No, he did. He said he
It
got
was
caught.
so
There is
classic.
no
He def-
evidence that Jim had any idea what was going on.
Yeah, the guy's a riot, by the way. Had one of the greatest media weeks in history, as far as I'm concerned.
chickens?
The chickens. He talked about the virus. He goes, yeah. They said I got a virus. I'm not sick though.
No, he's going to have an apple and do some push-ups
Someone
just
do
in
some
case.
push-ups,
You
sweat
guys,
it
I
out.
did more content around Jim Harbaugh's chickens today or this week, like more than anything else. And watch Predictable Picks. Ronnie Bell has the best chickens answer ever.
Fantastic. And you've got a bunch of great stuff. Josh Dobbs, 5 fun facts about Josh Dobbs. I love your 5 fun facts
Yes.
on the Fangirl Sports
Okay,
Network,
yes.
FGSN.com. She is Tracy Sandler. We love having you. We hope to get you more in the future. We will talk to you soon.
Bye, guys.
Tracy
Thanks,
Sandler, the
Tracy.
Fangirl
Thank
Sports
you.
Network. When we come on back, how about this? Brandon Aiyuk spoke to our guys after the game. He'll be our post-game player interview. Adam Copeland, Dennis Brown, John Lund. Niners over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Not with Tom Brady, this time with Baker Mayfield, 27-14. Brock Purdy, game of his life on the Sports Leader.
27-14, the 49ers beat the Bucs. So it's a short week to take on Seattle, who, if you didn't know, lost at the Rams 17-16. So the 49ers are alone in first place in the NFC West. It's time for your player post-game interview. It's brought to us by our good friends at the Handlery Hotel, the Handlery Union Square Hotel, San Francisco's oldest family-owned hotel. Brandon Aiyuk, great game, 5 for 156, including the 76-yarder that essentially sealed this thing. They had to hang on, but it was a huge play as the drive started at their own 2-yard line. So 76 yards for Brandon Aiyuk, another sparkling performance. And here he is with Greg and Tim after the game.
He's been on fire all year. Well, that one is the longest play from scrimmage in the NFL as a pass play to Brandon Aiyuk, the 76-yarder over the top. Meanwhile, Jason Myers just missed a 55-yard field goal at SoFi. Seattle loses 17-16, so the Niners are 7-3. Seattle falls to 6-4. Thanksgiving night showdown. Brandon Aiyuk, welcome. Take us through that entire play. Kyle Juszczyk moved to the outside receiver next to you. You moved in the slot. You ran a straight vertical on Jamel Dean. And as we heard from the call, there was some kind of an alert, a can or an Oscar or something called from Brock Purdy. So did he change the play before the snap? And tell us about your route on the play, if you would.
Yeah. First, we want to start out just maybe attacking zone coverage. And we put a can on there just for a man beater as well. We lined up once juice motions. We saw that we had man coverage, so we kind of canned to our man beater, which is just a slot fade, and Purdy threw a dime. And then that was the longest play in receiving play in the NFL.
That's
in
crazy.
2020.
That's crazy.
You love that, huh?
2023, not a longer pass play by an offense in the league, and you were part of it. You were it. Talk about the ability to get in 21 personnel and make those calls, knowing you're getting man coverage, and what a weapon Kyle Juszczyk is, BA, in terms of everything he does for this offense.
Oh yeah, me and him were talking today. Just dirty work.
Yep.
We feel like we're those guys that we might not pop up, but we're gonna always do that dirty work. So that was our mindset today, was getting the dirty work, and that's what he does for us. And a whole lot more, but starting there.
Yeah, and the way that he can help ID things for everybody. And I loved all your dagger, your digs, all the in cuts, 3 beaters, 1 beaters. You guys see enough of single high that Brock can keep those windows open by holding defenders, and you were wicked at those in cuts. You could beat them all day long. Just talk about this offense with Purdy delivering the mail and opening windows.
Oh yeah. We call those plays every time. Every time you hear a play that might be going, you get excited just because you have a great chance of getting it. Just because his timing is crazy. His ability to fit the ball in windows. He's just super accurate, and he's running this offense like it's tailor made for him. And I'm just super excited. I'm sure all the pass catchers are super excited to be playing receiver alongside him, or tight end, or whatever, even running back. Just having that guy as our quarterback. It's been a lot of fun.
And all you guys as weapons, and whether you're a decoy or whether, Debo is a decoy, or today on the Kittle corner route, CMC is a decoy. It's like, who you going to double, and we're going to slide someone right in behind you.
Yeah, pick your poison.
Right.
Pick your poison. Who you want to go to? We kind of talked about it this week. Kyle kind of broke that down to us in the meetings this week. Just like if it might be called for this guy, but it might end up going to this guy who's a third, fourth, who knows? But when you got maybe me in position, you got George in position, Debo in position, McCaffrey, Juwan, any of those guys who end up being your fourth or fifth or third or second option, it's gonna be tough. So when we're on it, it's gonna be super tough.
What does it mean having the big dog, the lead dog, the alpha male back on the field in Trent Williams, and just to this offense from a culture standpoint and just the mindset of you guys? You're out on the perimeter, you're running passing routes, and you're doing a great job blocking, but just having him out there, talk about that.
Oh yeah, he just brings the energy when he walks in the building. It's time to go when you see Big Trent. And he carries that onto the field when we walk out there, getting everybody going, get everybody ready to go. And when you see Big Trent doing his thing, throwing guys around, bringing a mindset, you can't help but do the same.
Last one for me, and I'll turn it back to Pop. And I think Kyle said it. It sounds like Talanoa Hufanga has got a torn ACL and more tests tomorrow. Just talk about his loss from the team, and you go against Jair Brown all the time. He's certainly been on the move, playing some pretty good football. But man, if Huff's out, that's going to be a challenge.
It's going to be tough. I just heard that news as well. Prayers out to Huff and his family, here with us. We got your back. But just prayers to him. We'll be praying for him. Trying to send energy his way.
I like that.
Yeah.
And Jair played well. They went at him on the Mike Evans route and the interception that he had on the deflected ball. So, have you played on Thanksgiving night in your career anywhere?
This will be my first time playing on Thanksgiving.
What do you think about that? Big game in
I'm
Seattle.
super excited. I have the weekend after that to enjoy Thanksgiving, but I'm super excited to eat on Thanksgiving.
First, you got to get a win on Thanksgiving night.
That's where we're gonna start eating at.
You've been eating all year.
We're gonna start eating on that field.
I mean, you've had some big games, but today a career high, the 156 and the 76-yarder over the top.
Having a great year.
Congratulations, brother. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, there you go. There is Greg and Tim with Brandon Aiyuk. As I said, the 76-yarder was the key time when it happened as well. Early in the third quarter to break this thing open. It was a close game at that point, 13-7. He gets a 76-yarder. The series started on their own 2-yard line. So great play by Brandon Aiyuk. Perfect throw from Brock Purdy. Speaking of perfect, he had a 158.3 rating, a perfect rating. We'll continue to talk about it coming up next. Text line is wide open. We're on YouTube and Twitch as well. Make sure that you tune in. John Lund, Adam Copeland, Super Bowl champion Dennis Brown, only here on the Sports Leader.
yeah, what an honor. But man, at the same time, I feel like there's still some plays and stuff that I wish I had back. So I'm not completely content with just that, but thought it was a great game with the guys around me, the coaching and the play calling, all of it. So that's a testament to the team, really. So.
There's Brock Perfect, 158.3.
Stop. Perfect. How many R's in that? Perfect.
Perfect.
That was a pretty good pop, I think. That was like my more perfect. Brock Purdy.
6 touchdowns, no interceptions his last 2, I'm sure, all week long. And I think this part is warranted. Early, a few weeks ago, before they go on the 3-game losing streak, he was being talked about as an MVP candidate. I think he will be once again as the 49ers improve to 7-3. Short week against Seattle, and I'll go to you, Copes, for those who are just tuning in. Text line is wide open. Give us your thoughts on the 49ers beating the Bucs today and then taking on a banged-up Seattle team. We don't know what's going to happen with Geno Smith. He's got the sleeve in the arm. He did come back late, but he wasn't looking good. And then Ken Walker, the third great running back for Seattle, he's out with an oblique. He missed the majority of this game after getting injured early in it. Talanoa Hufanga, looks like it's going to be an ACL. They're going to confirm that with an MRI tomorrow, and they're going to check that out. But it looks like it's going to be an ACL. So, guys, just thoughts on the win and how big of a one it was, because sometimes you go into a game like this and you got Seattle next week, you got the big win against Jacksonville, and you could have some kind of a letdown, but that certainly didn't seem to be the case today.
I didn't feel that was coming today. I didn't think the Bucs were a great team. They had to come cross country. I know it's usually a bigger deal going west to east than it is east to west, but still, they played a game at home. Niners are coming off a bye 2 weeks ago. Means they're still fairly fresh, especially after a big game last week where they didn't have to have everybody play the entirety of the game. I mean, that final drive, you got Sam Darnold. I think Brock picked up a first down midway through the drive. They pull him, they put Darnold in, they run it a bunch with Elijah Mitchell to get into the red zone. Brock never saw the field again. McCaffrey, the only other guy who comes back out. So you're fairly fresh. You're talking, it's not a half a quarter, but after that score, guys aren't playing at the same rate and at the same pace they were. So felt pretty good about this one coming in. You say don't overlook anybody. I was completely overlooking the Buccaneers and felt like the Niners kind of toyed with them. Would it have shocked anybody if they won by 30 or put up the same score they did last week? I don't think so. So it's a big win in terms of stockpiling wins and starting to stack wins, like we heard Steve Young say in the Steve Young show before the game. However, I said before the game, for me, it was about a win and it was about getting out healthy. They didn't just not get out healthy. They lost one of their absolute best defenders in a place on the field that defensively, at least, is probably the weakest unit in the secondary. Not probably, it is the weakest unit in the secondary, and he's the star of that unit. So it's a big deal for me. They've got Chase Young because that hopefully helps the secondary, and Jair Brown's going to be thrown into the mix now. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think it was an important win. I mean, we talked about, before the game that, this was a team that the 49ers should dominate. And I think there's times in the games when they dominated, but I think especially in the second half, there was a little momentum as far as Tampa Bay went. I mean, the run game was clicking. That screen game was clicking. There was a lot of passes down the field. There was a lot of third down conversions. So, but they come out with the win. Brock Purdy, his perfect game. The defense makes plays when they're supposed to make them, so they come out with a win. Now you go on the road, divisional game. Seattle, we've talked about it. The weather might be something. It might be raining there, and we know what the 12th man is. So it's going to be a challenge. I mean, this is playing the Seattle Seahawks. It's always a game that's, you got to get ready for because they know each other so well. And then you got Pete Carroll on the sidelines, and he's a great motivator. So, they're going to be fired up. They lose a close game to the Rams today, the Seahawks do. And, Pete Carroll is really good about motivating people, especially after a win, motivating the football team. So it's going to be a challenge. You come into it, it's a divisional game. You got to continue to win football games. Then you got another big one. So just, this is the time. I mean, every game counts. Every game is important. You can't look past anyone.
What's interesting, too, is just within division. You see this in every division in football where a team may not be very good. But so, for example, Washington, who lost again today, they played Philly twice already this year. They played them really, really tough both times. We know what it's like against Seattle. I happen to think Seattle is one of the more overrated teams in the league, but it's a division game, and they know each other so well. It kind of rotates between the Rams and the Cardinals and the Seahawks, and they just know each other so well, both teams, especially when it's Pete Carroll, the defensive guy, against Kyle Shanahan, the offensive guy. I think on paper, you look at the 49ers, and I think to myself, they're going to sweep the Seahawks. But then again, and Geno Smith hasn't been the same kind of guy. Their defense is kind of hot and cold. They couldn't keep the Rams off the board, scoring late in that game when they needed to. They weren't able to make the plays. But they do have talent, and Kyle does know Pete, and Pete does know Kyle. So you kind of throw everything out the window. And then you just mentioned not the recent past, but it's just been one of the toughest places to play. They're going to be loud. They're going to be lubed up. for Thanksgiving. I don't know what that's going to be like at the stadium. I'm sure it'll be just the same from the Seahawks fans.
By the way, I like that Tracy Sandler called that game last year there because Brock was here. She called the rib game. I like that we have a turkey leg game and a rib game in Seattle.
I would love to see Trent.
Anybody else hungry?
I'd like to see Trent with the big giant turkey leg at like the 50. For how many years have we been talking about that game where Russ and more so Sherman were at the 50 and NBC had him out there eating turkey on the logo? It's like, okay, it's payback time.
Yeah.
Dude, Richard Sherman is one of the most hilarious villains in 49er history. The fact that he came here and was like a good Niner, and now we can't even hate him as bad as we did because he was like talking smack. He was like ripping Crabtree, winning NFC championships, wins a Super Bowl, one of the best defenses ever, and then he's eating turkey. Like, there's all the most like annoying things Richard Sherman did.
He's right back being a Seahawk. I mean, you see him at practices. He lives up in Seattle. That's where his wife's from.
He's also ripping Russ.
Yeah, they are not. They're not going to spend Thanksgiving together.
I didn't think so. No. Adam Copeland, Super Bowl champion John Lund and Dennis Brown is here too. Hanging
Would you
out.
like to see my ring?
All smiles after a 49er victory over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 27-14. We'll get you the call of the game coming up in just a few minutes. We are live still from Levi's Stadium. I know, hard to believe. We got one game still underway right now. It is 10-6 in favor of the Minnesota Vikings over the Denver Broncos. That game is being played in Denver right now. Second quarter, 4 minutes to play in the first half. We got more to come here. We will wrap things up in just a few minutes. We are live on Twitch and on YouTube and the KNBR app, only here on the Sports Leader.
49ers winning today, 27-14 over the Bucs. Short week going off to Seattle. Let's give you the drive of the game. That's brought to us by our good friends at Modesto Toyota. Kevin and the entire crew at Modesto Toyota, they are awesome. It's worth the drive for selections and savings. I've done it plenty of times, and it is awesome. Family owned since 1965. My good friends at Modesto Toyota. After getting shut out last week, 17 in a row, ties Lenny Moore's all-time NFL record for touchdowns in consecutive games. Christian McCaffrey didn't get one last week against Jacksonville. It wasn't for the lack of trying, but this week he gets back on the board.
Second and goal, 4-yard line. Juszczyk was out wide. Now he comes inside a bunch with Deebo Samuel and George Kittle. Purdy looking that way, right. McCaffrey wide open. Touchdown! CMC!
Christian McCaffrey back on the board, part of a victory. That was the first touchdown of the game. 27-14, the 49ers win it. We'll put a bow on this thing, some final thoughts, and get you ready for the Seahawks and the 49ers from Seattle on Thanksgiving. We'll do it next, only here on the Sports Leader.
Purdy going to can the play here. His three receivers right, Aiyuk and Juszczyk left. Going deep down the sideline for Aiyuk. He's got it, and he's gone. 20, 10, 5, touchdown! San Francisco! Aiyuk! Aiyuk! Aiyuk is on fire!
There it was. The Aiyuk big touchdown trap from Brock Purdy. Why don't we make that today's call of the game? Greg and Tim, I feel like that one's been the call of the game a lot. We'll make that the call of the game. Sponsored by Call 811. Whether your project is big or small, always call 811. Before you dig, Adam Copeland, Dennis Brown, the Super Bowl champ, and John Lund wrapping it up here from Levi Stadium. Week 11, Niners 7-3. They're now 2-0 out of the bye week and set themselves up for an opportunity, if they can keep on winning on December 3rd, to try to steal a game back from the Philadelphia Eagles and give them a chance head-to-head at taking a number 1 seed. Let's wrap things up here. Dennis, final thoughts on this one?
Good win. Good win. You got to start stacking some wins, and your schedule doesn't get. I mean, this is a team that you should have went out and take care of business, and you did it. You got to go on the road now, short week, and then you have to play Philadelphia. So you just got to keep winning. Focus on one game at a time, preparing for one game at a time, and get some W's, and that's how you make it to a championship, winning football games.
I feel great about the win, and I feel good about them in a short week because they know Seattle so well. But we have to acknowledge the fact that Jair Brown might be a nice player, but he's unproven. And you're talking about an all-pro safety who's made a ton of plays over the last couple of years in Talanoa, Hufanga, and he's going to be missed. So we talked about this in the pregame show. Can you stay healthy? And I don't know how healthy Seattle's going to be. They got some major injuries that happened to them today. But Hufanga is probably out for the year, and no matter how you want to spin this thing, it's going to have an effect.
Well, if there's any saving grace to that, it's that you've got Chase Young, who looked good yet again today. They again created pressure at the quarterback spot, and Baker Mayfield's not immobile. I mean, he's a guy who can get out and pick up some yards with his legs. They stopped him short a couple of times. He did pick up a few on some short yardage gains, and they forced a fumble when he jumped over the middle. So Niners have set themselves up in a good position. We will be back soon. How about this? Thursday, Thanksgiving night. We will be the third game. Niners at the Seattle Seahawks. Brock Purdy last year had to play Seattle on a short week after he made his first career start against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He beat Tom Brady, and then he went up to Seattle, the rib game, where he beat him when he was hurt, did not play or practice all week long. He'll see if he can do it again. 5:20 kickoff. We'll be on for the pregame. Let's see, a 4:20 handover to Greg and John, which means we will start at 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock on Thanksgiving Thursday. We'll be with you live, KNBR 104.5 and 680, and again on twitch.tv/thesportsleader and YouTube, as well as the KNBR app. Everybody, thanks so much for tuning in and streaming. For Dennis Brown, the Super Bowl champion, John Lund, I'm Adam Copeland. Niners beat the Buccaneers, moved to 7-3 by a final score of 27-14. KNBR rolls on. The sports continue on the Sports Leader.